The reality we live in can be a very strange place. Most of the time, fact being stranger than fiction. How will we ever start to understand this reality we live in unless we question everything? Join me and a guest as we unravel the mysteries of this reality, one topic at a time. This is Inquiries of Our Reality with Shayn Orin.
What is up, Inquirers, and welcome to the expanse of deep open-minded conversation. I'm the one they call Shane, and today for you guys, I have the return of author and researcher Nomar Slevik. After a bit of a delay from part 1, episode 319, if you guys wanted to go check that one out, he's here to dive back into his most recent book, Humanoid Encounters, Creatures, Phantoms, and Other Strange Entities Sighted in Maine. And just like part 1, he's got a gambit of all different fascinating encounters. But before we get into this one, of course, just a couple of quick news and updates. You guys know the usual. For anybody that didn't catch it on the last couple episodes, I'm starting to do 0.5 episodes, which are extended / bonus episodes that you guys will only be able to catch over on the Patreon. I might unlock a few on the main feed here and there, as I did on Monday, just to kind of give you guys a little bit of a feel for what we're doing over there. But if anybody might be interested in getting some bonus content, you guys can go over to the Patreon and check that one out. And in the process of talking about growing the show, of course, I am still doing that t-shirt giveaway. All you guys have to do to possibly get entered to win a free t-shirt of your choice off of the Open Minds Media merch store is to fill out a now 8-question survey, which is available down in the show description. And it should only take a couple minutes. It's just all your guys' thoughts and opinions on different things regarding the show. And if you guys wouldn't mind taking a few minutes to fill that out, I would definitely appreciate it, because it's all going back towards trying to help the show grow and improve and hopefully be able to break this glass ceiling, which we've been kind of hitting the last year or so. So any feedback, like I said, definitely helps, guys. And for anybody that's been catching Bizarre Inquiries live, and for anybody that caught the last episode live yesterday, we definitely appreciate it. Looking forward to catching you guys on the next one, which will be on September 4th, of course, at 7:15 p.m. over there on the Open Minds Media YouTube and Twitch channels. So if anybody wants to check that out, and as we get a bit closer, of course, we will be posting about it on social media. But if anybody has any questions, clips, articles, or anything like that they would like to submit for that, make sure you guys get it to us before then, of course. And on another note, if anybody would like to support the show, there are a handful of different ways that you guys can do so. First and foremost, you guys can go and follow the show on Instagram and Facebook. You guys can also go and check out the Patreon with 2 tiers available, ad-free / early access and full access. You guys can also go and check out the Open Minds Media merch store with t-shirts starting at just $15.68 plus shipping. You guys could definitely leave a review, which I would greatly appreciate, because it's been a while since I've had one to read on the show. So if anybody wouldn't mind submitting one, I will definitely give you a big shout out in the show. And you guys can also share the show / share episodes if you think that anybody would enjoy them. You can continue catching live shows on the Open Minds Media YouTube and Twitch channels. You guys could possibly even donate to the show if you guys find it worth value. There are links for that available down in the show description. You guys can also go and check out the affiliate links with some additional discounts and credits available. And the last thing you guys can do is go and check out my other show, Bizarre Encounters with Shayn Orin. Might even give you guys an extra show to listen to get you through your work week, of course. And every single thing that I mentioned above is all available off of the link tree, which is available down in the show notes. And before we get into the show, if anyone is interested in being a guest on the show, sharing their experiences or encounters, or contacting me for any reason whatsoever, you guys can do so through email, which is inquiriesofourrealitypodcast@outlook.com, or you guys can call or text the Open Minds Media hotline 24/7, whatever happens to be easier, and that number is 313-364-1551. And if you happen to miss that, it is available down in the show description. And with that, let's get into the show. please welcome back to the show for the long-awaited part 2 of the first episode that he came on, talking about humanoid encounters of Maine. Please welcome back to the show for now his third return, one of my personal favorite guests, Nomar Slevik. How's it going today, man?
It's good, man. It's good. Thanks so much for having me back. And yeah, long awaited. We've tried to connect to do this part 2, and it just kept, eluding us, much like these friggin' cryptids and the aliens. They're very elusive. But we're finally here. We're finally connected. So I'm excited.
Hey, it could have been a lot worse, I guess. The first episode dropped 5/16, so I guess it could have been worse. I mean, it could have been a year, it could have been 6 months. I guess 3 months out, that's not too bad.
That's not bad at all. Yeah. I mean, dare say I'm on too much.
But I'm okay with that, though. I mean, a good conversation is a good conversation, and, the listeners enjoy it, I enjoy it, so why not give them what they want, man?
Hell yeah, dude. I love talking to you. So, yeah, this is cool. Thank you.
So, kind of hopping back into talking about your book, for anybody that may not have caught the first episode, or for whatever reason they don't want to go back and listen to it, if you just kind of want to give them like a brief, quick update on what exactly is going on with the book before we dive into part 2 today, at least, give somebody who may not have a frame of reference somewhere to start if they haven't listened to the first episode.
Sure. So the name of my latest book, which came out this year, is Humanoid Encounters. And it's all stories that I've collected and some people I've interviewed about the strange creatures they've seen in my home state of Maine. So we have everything from, weird aquatic creatures to Bigfoot, of course, dogmen, black-eyed kids, and certainly some alien stories in there as well. And the first episode, we shared a bunch of stories. We talked about frogmen and pale crawlers, and we shared a Bigfoot story or a dogman story that included a couple of nuns who were on vacation and came across this strange dogman creature. So if you haven't listened to that that part 1, go check it out. Some good stories in there.
Definitely some interesting face stories, one too, if you guys want to hear some more face stories, because you can't get enough face stories. And I mean, considering that the first time we talked about Dogman, and I don't feel like we really covered Sasquatch too much. I know at least we got 2 to start with that we were talking about the tail end of last time, and that's Black-Eyed Kids and Sasquatch. So wherever you want to start, man, I would love to kind of dive back in, and as usual, man, we'll just kind of see where it flows to.
Yeah. So there was this woman who lived in like central western Maine, and in 2 different areas of the state, she had these crazy Bigfoot encounters. And the crazier of the 2, she had bought a cabin with her boyfriend in a very rural section of Maine, and they had gone up there on a weekend during the winter to snowmobile and have a good time and cook some good food and hang out with some friends. So it was actually 2 couples, and they had been snowmobiling all day long, having a great time. But the couple, especially the woman that owned the cabin, they wanted to go back so they could get dinner prepared for everybody. So they're home or they're at the cabin, and their friends are still out on the trails snowmobiling. They said that they'd be back after dark, just in time to eat. So they're home, and they're, just starting to prepare to get some stuff ready for food. And they start hearing these strange noises outside, and they're not quite sure what it is. For a second, it almost sounds like snow falling off the roof and landing on the ground, like with a thud. And so they kind of looked out the window, and they're not seeing like piles of random snow that have fallen off the roof anywhere. They're like, this is weird. And then they started hearing these bangs on the side of the cabin. So the woman is getting pretty concerned, and the guy, he went to go grab his gun. So now he's got a gun, and she's like, what the hell's going on? What's outside? So they look out the windows again. They're checking as much as they can, and they're not seeing anything, but they're continuing to hear banging on the sides of the cabin, and it's seemingly happening really fast on different sides of the cabin, almost like this. If there's multiple things out there, banging. And then they start to hear growls. So they start thinking, oh my God, there's a bear outside, like on the porch or something. So they look out the window, and what they see is certainly not a bear, but they also don't get a full look at what it could be. But what they're seeing is not a bear. They see a lot of fur, and they can't see the top of it. So they know that they're dealing with something that's tall, and it's bipedal, and it's growling. And then it starts to scream, and it's freaking them the hell out. They know that the gun is not going to do anything, and they start hearing the banging again, and it's almost acting like this crazy, like massive chimpanzee. They're hearing like, like crazy screams and banging on the side. And then finally, like they've been going through this for like 35, 45 minutes. And then they can finally, in the distance, hear the motor of the snowmobile coming back to the cabin. And that's when everything goes quiet. They hear the snowmobile pull up out front. So they burst out the door, and they're seeing gigantic footprints everywhere in the snow. And they're like, oh my God. So they run to the friends. They're like, get the hell inside right now. So they all get inside, and they tell the couple, like, this is what's been going on since you've been gone. So needless to say, they stayed up the rest of the night, terrified, in a panic that this thing was going to come back. But it never did, thankfully, for them anyway. But that was their story. And this happened in the early 1980s in rural Western Maine. And pretty crazy and pretty creepy, to hear those screams and bangs on the side of the cabin.
Kind of reminds me a bit of like Ape Canyon or something like that. Like,
yeah, for sure.
I'm kind of curious if do you know what the like the background is of this cabin? Where they just, is it a place that they weren't normally at too often? So is it a place that just kind of stayed a lot of the time just in the woods with nobody really in the cabin? Yeah,
yes, in the sense that she had just bought it, and this was one of their first trips. They had been up a couple of times, but this is one of their longer, I think it was like a 3-day weekend type of deal. So this is like one of their longer stays up there. They hadn't even been up there in the summer yet, So I'm curious if this was a matter of like, there's a territory where not a lot of people really ever go. The house may have been up for sale for a couple of years or something like that. Sure.
And then a tribe of Sasquatch moved in, and as soon as they walked in, they were right in the middle of their territory. Because, I mean, depending on what's on this old farmhouse, I don't know if there's like fruit trees, if there might be, different areas where there might be different stuff growing. But, if these guys had like a perfect spot and then these people just showed up in the middle of it, man, I mean, they're lucky that they made it out of there and that snowmobile showed up and scared that thing off. Or, there may even have been multiples out there at one point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because they said there were a lot and a lot of footprints, and then they were hearing it on multiple sides of the house, of the walls of the cabin. So, they couldn't really tell because there was just a lot of chaos, and they were in a very heightened, frightened state. But it sounded like to them, because they were hearing a lot of thumping running around, that they couldn't tell if this thing was just really quick and would go bang on a wall, then would go run and bang on another one, or there could have been multiples, like you said, that were out there doing that thing, and simply to scare, because they know their strength. Like they could have come in, or done some damage, and it was almost like to terrorize, like, don't come here anymore.
Say, it seems like with a lot of the Sasquatch encounters, these things seem to move in like little tribes or little packs, even if they kind of break off in scouts. So I'm assuming that there was probably at least a couple of them. And honestly, yeah, probably trying to scare these things off because, again, like you said, these things know their strength. Like if they want to come through that window, they want to come and get you, they were going to do it. But the intention wasn't necessarily to draw more attention to themselves. It was just to get those people out of the area, and then hopefully they'd have that territory back to them because, I think that these things are intelligent enough, and I think we've talked about this on a previous episode, that they're aware of the fact that if they just like all out just brutalize and kill somebody, that there's going to be a lot more people showing up in the area. I think they've gotten smart enough now to know that the best course of action is to try to get somebody off the area without using any type of violence, because that just brings more people in. And I'm sure they're probably getting to the point now where, they're starting to realize that, Sasquatchers and stuff like that will show up if they do certain things, because they probably got smart enough through the centuries that they started like throwing rocks and throwing all the little stuff that they do. And now Sasquatchers are like, oh, that's a calling card right there. There's squatches in the area, and they're just like, dang it, now we got to find something else to throw so they don't figure out it's us.
Right. But yeah, really intelligent beings, so I really like the fact that they were being terrorized as opposed to being attacked, you know?
Yeah, that's always the thing with like Sasquatch is that it's like in the back of your mind, you know that it's just this brutal creature that it can completely destroy whatever it wants to destroy. But in the other side of your mind, it's kind of like you have this, I don't know, kind of like home feeling with Sasquatch, where it kind of seems like we kind of have this mutual weird understanding with each other that it's like, you know, we could definitely shoot at them, they could definitely tear us apart, but we kind of choose to, you know, make direct eye contact and kind of go our separate ways, where, you know, if you encounter something else out there such as a dog man, like you usually don't get that opportunity. There seems to be this like mutual unspoken understanding amongst like humans and Sasquatch when you get to that like eye to eye situation.
Sure. Yeah. And there's been many times, many stories that I'm sure you've heard and I've certainly heard where, like you were saying, there's the eye to eye contact, and it could be 300 yards away, but, you know, they see each other. There's that understanding, that recognition of, okay, that human is there. Okay, that Sasquatch is there. And then they go their separate ways, you know, and which is one of the best ways to go about it, in my opinion, you know, but I'm also a scaredy cat. But.
Hold on tight, guys. We'll be right back after this brief commercial break. And now back to the show.
Just out of curiosity, just since we're already on the topic of Sasquatch, have you by chance come across any more like aggressive Sasquatch encounters out of Maine? Because it seems like, you know, kind of demographically, you know, there's a lot more aggressive Sasquatch encounters up in like Alaska. And it seems like the more south you go, the less aggressive they seem, and the more like they're just kind of trying to scare you off, bluff charge. Like it doesn't seem like there's too much where they're trying to like, you know, throw stuff at you to the point where they're actually trying to like hurt anybody. But just out of curiosity, have you come across any more like aggressive Sasquatch stories as far as Maine goes? Or does it seem like it's mainly just scaring people off?
Yeah, nothing jumps to mind, and it's mostly either scaring somebody off or it's a very just brief like sighting scenario. Now, there's also a few sprinkled in here and there where like an entire town is kind of aware of a bunch of sightings that are happening. Like there's a little flap, you know, that'll happen here and there throughout the decades, and an entire town becomes aware of like a Sasquatch in town, you know, and there's multiple sightings. But again, you know, nothing violent or nothing, you know, in an attack sort of sense that I can remember anyways right now. But there was a really strange story where I think something happened to a Sasquatch. A Sasquatch might have been hurt or killed, you know, so kind of the opposite. And that's a story. Geez, I think that's also from like the mid 80s. But there's this coastal town. There's actually a bunch of them right in a row. It's Belfast and Camden, Rockport, Northport, Lincolnville. You know, it's all these small little coastal towns that are right in a row. And there's a bus system that goes between all the small towns. And this gentleman was riding the bus with the bus driver, and he was like the last stop, I think, because there was nobody else on the bus except these two. And they're coming up to this area in Northport, which I've been to a million times. I've gone there and ridden my bike and stuff. And there is a weird vibe there. We can get into that after this, but
yeah, or keep that on the retainer because I don't want to forget to get back into that. I'm curious.
So they're riding on the bus. He's sitting up front and he takes this route every day. Like this is how he gets to work type of thing, you know, like he doesn't have a car. This is what he does with the bus. So he's like very friendly with the bus driver. So he's sitting up front and they're talking and all this stuff. And they're driving by this place. Oh my God, I knew I'd forget the name of it, but it's like this, almost like a resort. There's all these little cabins up this hill. Okay. And it's all obstructed by trees from the road. So there's like a big sign and then a road to turn up. But once you get up there, it's just all cabins and stuff. And it's a cool little place that people go for the summer, basically.
Is it still open, just out of curiosity?
It is. Yeah. Yeah. And it's a gorgeous place. And that's where I go to ride my bike sometimes because there's all these cool little pathways and everything.
Is that place that you took that picture the other day that you said like, oh, I swear I'm actually here and the background isn't cropped in? Is that place?
It is not. That's a different place. But it kind of looks similar, you know, with, you know, these little tarred paths and, you know, trees everywhere. So they're riding in the bus. It's at night. It's in the evening. And they're coming up on this resort type place. And they see it's almost like construction lights are up everywhere. But the bus driver has been going back and forth all day. And they were like, what the hell is this? There's no construction going on here today. Like, this just showed up. Like, he already went by it, on one leg of that trip and going by again. And it wasn't there on that previous leg. So there's all these lights set up. And as they're getting closer, they see all these gigantic black SUVs parked on the side of the road. And they say that there's no license plates whatsoever on them. And they're all parked there, and there are these big construction lights. And so the bus is slowed way down, and they're treating it kind of like a construction area, but there's nothing in the road. It's all on the side of the road and kind of up the hill of this resort place. And as they're driving in between two of the SUVs, and there's a construction light very close to it, they see a very large, hairy leg. And like, hairy in the sense of it's not a human leg. It looks like a human leg, but there's entirely too much hair on it. And it looks like the foot and the ankle and like the part of the shin of this leg has been, like, the fur has been ripped off of it. And there's blood kind of everywhere on the tar where this leg is lying. They can't see the rest of the body. They're just seeing this one leg, kind of like partway in the sidewalk in between these two SUVs. And so they're going very slow by it, and they're looking at this partial leg thing. And the guy who sees it, is talking to the bus driver, and they're like, you see this, right? And they're like, yeah. And like, are you thinking like what I'm thinking? And the bus driver goes, Bigfoot. And the guy's like, yeah, what the hell? So
somebody hit a Bigfoot or something? Like, I'm assuming this thing wasn't moving, right? This wasn't like it was going to step out. It was like they literally saw this thing laying on the ground on the side of the road. Laying
on the ground, yeah. It was a foot laying. I'm sorry if I didn't make that clear, but yeah, it was a foot laying on the ground. And the rest of the body was obscured by the SUVs, and whatever was beyond it, they just couldn't see beyond the SUVs, but they could see this leg. And they were seeing probably like from the knee down of this leg, and part of that hair was gone. There was like kind of a puddle of blood there. And but the bus wasn't going to stop. They didn't see any people, which was also weird. Like, did they duck or like where are, or because there was a bunch of, they said 6, 7, 8 SUVs. So the bus driver goes and drops them off. He's like, hey man, keep me posted if you see anything else tonight or whatever. So I think that might have been a Friday night. So now we've got the weekend that goes, and the guy wasn't working, so he didn't take the bus, but he comes back Monday and he takes the bus. And so he's like, gets to the bus driver. He's like, so anything happened? And the bus driver was like, no, in fact, when I went back through again, it was like nothing was ever there. The SUV was gone. All the SUVs were gone. All the lights were gone. There was no blood pool or anything. It almost looked like they scrubbed the road. It was crazy. And, that's all they know of what happened, but a wild story.
Dude, that's one of those things that you got to assume that happens if these things are out there, like at some point here and there. But that has to be one of those main things that there's like a quick cover up on it, because you can't break that paradigm of letting people know that these things are out there, even for the sake of just, people wondering what there's like a big conspiracy about Sasquatch. Like, even just off the aspect of if there's a species that's undocumented that's living in this area, now this entire area has to be sectioned off. Nobody can do anything with it. No development can be made. Like, you have to start checking the area. Like, that's the development that really comes in with like Sasquatch. It's not like trying to hide them from the people. I think it's more so a matter of like not having to block off giant sections of land. If they just don't acknowledge they exist, then it's a whole other thing. Kind of like, the black cat stories and stuff.
Business can go on as usual, and nobody has to change what they're doing.
Exactly. And it's like when it comes to people actually hitting these things, it kind of makes you wonder how they go about it, where if it's like a matter of you hit this, you didn't see anything, the person's already shooken up, and they kind of just tell them this is the story of what happened, and they push them along their way, and it's never to be spoken of again. Or if it's on the flip side of it, they try to convince the person that they hit somebody so that the story can partially be like covered up, because there's two different scenarios. It's either one, you try to block it out completely, or you spin the narrative. And if somebody, for example, on a Friday night is coming home and they're, over the limit, for example, and they end up hitting a Sasquatch, they may not be fully comprehending like what may have happened, especially just being in that moment of fear and stuff. Like perfect cover up just to make them think that they hit like a homeless person maybe or something like that wasn't like documented. Now you just have this Sasquatch getting smashed on the side of the road completely covered up. Like, it's one of those things, if somebody hits a Sasquatch, that's one of those things that it's going to get talked about real quick, where I feel like they're going to get a quick cap on that, just like the UFO stuff. Like if there's any crashes, sightings, like it's not too far long before like all the black vans start showing up and clean everything up, and then there's no sign of anything happening.
And for them to get there that quickly and to leave that quickly too, like this is, even though it's coastal Maine and it's a populated area, it's still out in the friggin' sticks, to get to from somebody from Boston to get up there quick. Because where are these big SUVs coming from? And like what agency is that? So the closest thing in my mind is like Massachusetts, where these people could come from. That's still like 4 hours away. So I don't think it was Massachusetts. So like, where are they coming from? Which is, that's unsettling in its own right,
NDAs can be a hell of a thing, I guess, though. I mean, they could probably hire just some generic cleanup crew that happens to be in the area. And as soon as they sign that legal document, it's like, if they talk about that story, they're going to come and get them for everything they got. So, I mean, signing NDAs for doing government jobs is
it's not like that's a new thing. Yeah. And to go back to the driver, like, and this is where my conspiracy mind goes a little bit crazy, so forgive me, but are they disappearing people? Like, I probably should have looked for that date and time to see if there were missing people or murders or, those are things you learn along the way as a researcher. Like, I should check
people
that,
killed in a car accident, possibly. Like,
yeah. Like anything in that area, out of the ordinary.
Yeah, talk about, like I said, it seems like it'd be one of those things that's like a really quick, easy cover up, because people are able to do it with not Sasquatch. I mean, the government can come in and take care of that stuff really, really quick.
Yeah.
And I don't know which way to go with this one, because I definitely want to get into the black-eyed kids, and I feel like the government talking about that is kind of a good leeway in. But before I get into that track, I want to make sure that we double back and talk about this town, because you said that there's a lot of high strangeness with this town, and I don't want to get too far away from it.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say the town, but that resort section where this thing happened to occur. I've been up in that area, and I've been all through it, and I've been up through there multiple times riding my bike, only during the day. And sometimes I'll stay a little late, that by the time I leave, it might just start getting dark, but there's a friggin' vibe, and I can't tell what it is, but something seems a little bit off. And like, this is a really nice area, and there's all these cute little cabins, and they're peppered throughout the whole area. Like it's a big area, and I'll see cars parked in front of some cabins while I'm riding around. I never friggin' see anyone. There's also a ball field, for recreation of some sort. There's a helicopter pad that's at like the top of this thing, the top of this hilly area, and that's where the ball field is as well and everything. But there's a helipad right there, which I guess could be a quick, getaway and stuff for officials to get there. But
hey, they know what they're dealing with, because it's kind of weird that, I mean, I'm sure depending on the resort, they have helicopter pads, but it seems kind of strange for a little cabin resort to have a helicopter pad, unless there might be something already documented in the area that they're keeping an eye on, or even telling people at night, like, hey, there's some animals in the area that are dangerous, so it's probably a good idea to stay in the cabins at night, not actually telling them what's actually going on in the area.
Right. But it's just interesting how anytime I'm up there, I think every once in a while I'll see like a grounds worker. I've seen them on, I think I saw one like in a golf cart at one point, and then I saw another one just like walking. But there's all these little trail offshoots and stuff. And I was going down there with my bike and hitting all these areas, and I just never see anyone. And it just gives me a weird vibe, like it's right in the middle of summer. I'm seeing a bunch of cars parked at these different cabins, and I know people just don't hang out at their cabins all day long, like they want to go to the ocean and the beach and, they're out and about in town and stuff, but surely one family's there, one day, like I can't keep picking the most opportune time to go when there's nobody around, type of thing. And not to mention that I'm still seeing cars too, because rarely people will bring 2 cars on vacation. That's insane. So if a car is parked at a cabin, it in my mind, it makes sense that they're there.
Yeah, somebody's around the area somewhere. I mean, if you looked into this this area in general to see if there's any like paranormal stories or even like Sasquatch stuff that goes farther back or anything?
I have, and there are some, and they're few and far between, and they're not as detailed as this one. So that's been the most major one. But there are a few other things peppered in throughout the years there, but I wouldn't even consider it in my world as a high strangeness place in Maine that I need to focus on, because there's not enough that happens there. I collect whatever comes from there, of course, but it's definitely not high on anybody's radar, and maybe that's the point. I don't know.
That's what I was going to say. You got to start keeping an eye on what exactly comes into that helicopter pad. See, if you're just seeing like commercial stuff come in, it's one thing, but if you start seeing like military looking helicopters or official looking helicopters, then, maybe it is an area to keep an eye on.
Yeah, for sure. But interesting how, you're asking about, if people have been attacked, and actually I have the opposite, and that, that's fairly
you don't come across
rare.
those very often. Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah. There's, I don't know if you've seen, but there's like this new hoax thing that's happening. Yeah.
The trucker one that I keep seeing getting reposted, but when you look at like the line, like his shoulder just kind of lays on a different spot. Good old AI,
Yeah. Gotta love it.
Inquiries of Our Reality will be right back after this brief commercial break, so stay tuned. And now back to the show.
And I guess kind of starting to switch up a little bit off the Sasquatch stuff, just because I know that we're a little bit limited on time because it's really hot where you're at and stuff tonight.
Yeah.
I want to be able to dive into some of these black-eyed kid stories because these always fascinate me. And as an extension off of that, because maybe they will kind of parallel, if you have any time slip stories for me, and I know it's not related to your book, but I always like diving into them if you happen to have some.
Yeah. I love time slip stories, and I definitely have a few. I might have even told you one. You'll have to stop me, if I did tell you one. But anyways, the black-eyed kids. First of all, black-eyed kids, for me, I feel like are almost like the last frontier of the paranormal, for me personally. Meaning, it's one of the last things that still creeps me out. You and I and countless others that do this stuff, there's not a lot that gets to us. We're pretty desensitized on stories, but black-eyed kid stuff always fascinates me and creeps me out. Is that similar for you?
It's the old folklore-y feel to them with the whole like let me in and having to like say certain like words or phrases. Like I think it's one of those things that for whatever reason that we have like the uncanny valley feeling, like, people reminisce about saying that it might have been some type of like apex predator that was beyond us. Then you get into the whole like vampire lore aspect of things. I think that we just have this like subconscious fear of something that's very similar to us, and on top of that is horrifying, but still runs under like rules or like regulations. It's kind of like a weird thing to describe, but like the fact of like something being right at your doorstep and not being able to come in until you give it entry, it almost like makes it creepier than if it was just trying to get in, because then it's kind of like what you're dealing with. You're dealing with something that you need to arm up, you need to deal with. But when you have this kid outside that's just giving you these really, really creepy feelings, and they're watching you and they're trying to get inside, but it's also like you have the moral aspect of like it's a kid and you can't just like try to whip one of these things with a baseball bat if they come in the door. It's like
and that's part of the juxtaposition of it as well, where it is a kid, it's not a monster, seemingly, at first glance, so people are almost, put off guard at first, and then
because you want to help, it gets your guard down. It's like, for lack of a better term, the whole thing about when you hear like a woman's voice or like a child's voice in the woods, and usually it's like the girls want to run off, so they usually tell the women in all these old folklore stories, if you hear this, don't go running off, because the men kind of know better at the time. It's like when you flip on this one, it seems like it's one of those ones that really like gets at men. I mean, women too, of course, but like for most men, it's like you're the protective one. You want to like protect like children when you see them in front of you. So when you have these kids that just kind of come up and they want help, it's like, you know, from most of the time, if a guy hears some screaming off in the distance, anything like that, you're like, yeah, I'm nothing to do with that. I know that's something bad. But when you have a kid in front of you, you have this like instinct that you want to protect and help. So it's like one of those ones that's kind of universal, where it kind of hits guys and it hits girls, but kind of on a different level.
Yeah. I can get behind that. So this one in particular is a woman. And it was about 10 o'clock at night in a town called Bangor. It's actually where Stephen King's from. And this was fairly recent. Bear with me. 2011. I like that it's not like, 30 years ago. So 2011, this woman is sitting in her living room reading a book about 10 o'clock at night. She's got a cat sitting in her lap, and her husband is working the late shift. So all of a sudden, the cat just like stands up on her lap and hisses at the door, and then jumps off of her and runs out of the room. And she's just like, freaking cats doing cat stuff, like, geez Louise. So she's getting her place back in her book and is almost about ready to read again when the doorbell rings, and it kind of jumps her. So she's like, what the hell? So she gets up and looks in the peephole and doesn't see anybody. And she's like, the neighborhood kid's messing with me? But, that's never happened before. So she's a little unsettled, but it's still not that big of a deal. So she turns around to go back to her chair, and then there's 3 loud knocks at the front door, and it jumps her again. And she's like, what the hell? And without even thinking, she just rips open the front door, and there's a screen door there. So
not a millennial, clearly. Millennials got this weird thing where we don't answer the front door at all. We kind of peek through the side windows, even if it is somebody we know.
Absolutely.
You can tell generational things. It's like millennials are not opening doors. Future generations beyond that, nope.
Yeah. I feel you on that. I'm like an elder millennial, young Gen X, and somebody comes knocking, like, what's going on? Why are you here?
It's gotten to a point in society now where if somebody knocks at your door, the first thing you're thinking of isn't like, oh, it's the salesman. It's somebody coming to give me something important. It's who the hell is knocking on my door and what do they want? Like, in society now where it's just you don't do that.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, she rips open the door. The light from the living room falls on this kid that's standing at the door. And she almost breathes like a sigh of relief. She definitely relaxes. And she's like, oh, okay, it's just a kid. But then she starts to worry, like, oh, crap, it's a kid, at my door at 10 o'clock at night. Like, this probably isn't good, but, maybe they got locked out of their house. You know how your brain is like, in 4 seconds, you're thinking a million things.
Yeah, trying to rationalize what's happening in front of you.
Yeah. And the kid then looks up at her, and sure enough, it's got the solid black eyes, and she's immediately hit with a feeling of dread. And the kid says, can you let me in? And the woman had to fight almost like it was a Jedi mind trick. And she had to fight. She was literally fighting her arm from reaching out to the screen door to open it to let the kid in. And just then she hears another hiss from the cat. And she looks over, and the cat is now sitting on the rug looking at the kid hissing. And it kind of snaps her out of her weird trance that she was in. And she's like, nope, and like slams the door and locks it. And she's like, oh my God. And she's looking out the peephole, and she's looking out the side window, and she can't see if the kid is there anymore, but they're not knocking. They're not doing anything. So she's like, okay, hopefully they left. So she turns on like all the lights. She turns the TV on. She's kind of done, having a quiet evening, and she just needs things to distract herself for the couple hours until her husband gets home. He gets home. She tells him everything and how the cat, kind of saved her from letting this kid in. And that was really all that happened. That's the entire story. But this happened in 2011. All these years later, it still scares her. She still thinks about it. And she said for a long time after that, just being near the front door after dark scared her, whether her husband was home or not. And even the cat started acting strange after that, and kind of hung out in that front room area, almost like it was waiting for this thing to come back. Very weird. And the black-eyed kids, like that if I were to have that experience, I feel like I would be traumatized from it.
Talk about having a whole other level of bonding with your cat, though, being able to like break that connection with you. Like that's going to be my personal favorite cat from then on out. I mean, and I'm sure you probably have some more of these stories from Maine, but before we get into those stories, just your opinion from some of your research that you've done. I know a lot of people go in different directions with these things, extraterrestrial, paranormal, demonic, the list goes on. But as far as like for your research, I know that nobody really has the answer to this. Where do you kind of lean on? What do you kind of think these things are?
I don't really know. I think when I first started hearing about these stories and reading them more, and then trying to research even further into potentially what these things could be, it really felt like folklore. Hearing these really strange stories without really any reason, like they come from nowhere and then they go nowhere. But while they're in the middle of that incident, there's a very heightened sense of fear. And that's almost the way you tell folklore stories. You know what I mean? They're not these long drawn out things. They can be. I mean, there's entire books, but a lot of times, like, campfire stories or whatever, they're very quick and they're to the point, and, there's a quick setup, a heightened thing of fear, and then boom, it's done. And these black-eyed kid stories almost follow this format. And you were talking about it earlier, where there's all this mythos around it, where they have to be invited in. There's typically two, one taller, one shorter, one older, one younger. A lot of times there's a male and a female, and every once in a while sprinkled in, there's a singular kid. So for a while anyways, it fell into like the vampiric folklore sort of vibe to me. And I'm like, I don't know if I believe a lot of these stories. The Brian Bethel story that kind of broke this wide open back in the 1990s, that one I thought sounded very real to me and very innocuous. It was really this really simple encounter, and it scared him for a moment, but it wasn't like this big drawn out scary thing. It was a quick thing that happened, but it was highly strange. So, but some of the other ones that I was reading after that, especially some of the ones from David Weatherly's book, when that first came out and it had all of these crazy black-eyed kid stories in it, a lot of them read to me like folklore. But now, after reading probably hundreds, maybe close to over 1,000 black-eyed kid stories, they're sounding more maybe interdimensional in some way. I don't think extraterrestrial, which I think I had that brief thought in some particular stories here and there, but I'm thinking interdimensional. That's a long way to say interdimensional, Shayn, is my opinion.
I mean, it seems like it kind of branches into a million different directions for me, but the one that seems to pop up the most is it almost kind of seems like kind of what you said, like something like extraterrestrial or almost like hybrid or something like that. Like it almost kind of seems like it has the feel of like if these things are like hybrids, like they're trying to test out the ability to see if one, they can pass as a human, and two, see if they might be able to use some like telekinetic abilities, because it seems like that's like the next step of evolution. Like if there is any type of like advanced humanoids beyond us, it seems like the next step would be to learn how to communicate through non-verbal means, because then there's not a means of being able to interpret words differently. You straight up put the thought into somebody's head. So like I said, I kind of keep falling more towards like the extraterrestrial aspect on these things. But just kind of on another weird spin to it too, I kind of get into the whole idea, as I mentioned earlier, about like the reason why we have some of these like residual fears, such as like uncanny valley, or just kind of know this motif of these things always asking to be let in. Like it just seems like it's the story that's kind of always existed through time. So I kind of get into the idea that the kids, or the black-eyed kids, aren't necessarily like a new thing, maybe like a new phenomenon that people are kind of starting to put a face and a name on, but sure, whatever these things are, they seem like they've existed forever, and they're just kind of moving under, I don't want to say new faces, but maybe under like new means of being able to collect prey, or new perspectives of things, or even in the aspect of like if there were these, like, for lack of a better term, vampiric beings, whatever that might be, because that kind of gets diverse as you go through folklore too, between like
Sure.
the Strigoi and like the classic vampires and everything.
Right.
But, if they spend years and years and years being these apex predators and they get to a point where humans start hunting them down, and there's all of these different things through time where when something starts taking down humans, we kind of pack all up together and we end up extincting that. There's like the giant stories, all that type of stuff from doing that. But, if we've done that through time, we've pushed whatever these things are into like hiding. Maybe it's just like a new philosophy on how to, again, collect prey, that rather than them coming out and trying to ambush people from like their full bulk, brutal muscle, they rather would like send the kids in, get them drawn down, get them weary, get them in the house, get them calmed down, have the kids take care of them, and then take them back, because then you're getting people's guards down with the kids. They're letting them in the house. Then once they're in the house, they might be able to do the attack, whatever it happens to be, and then get rid of them before anybody else really figures out about it. And I know that there's a handful of stories about people letting these black-eyed kids in, but clearly they didn't succeed at whatever they were doing. Otherwise, those people, I'm assuming, probably wouldn't have been able to be around to retell the tale. Like,
Sure.
I feel like there's probably a pretty good number of black-eyed kid stories of people that let them in that,
we don't know.
You never heard from those people again. It just became another missing persons case.
Right.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back after this brief commercial break. And now back to that deep conversation you crave.
Did I tell you about my brief potential BEK run-in?
I don't think you did.
I mean, I'm taking a lot of leaps and bounds, but it really sounds like one to me. So this was actually probably similar time frame to when this happened, in the same town, mind you.
That makes it even weirder.
Yeah. So I had left a friend's apartment. It was about 1 a.m. We had watched a movie, and we said our goodbyes. I left, got in my car, and literally went home. And a few minutes after I get home, because it was like, a 10-15 minute ride for me to get home. And then I got settled in, and then I got a text message from this person. And I'm like, oh, I figured they'd be in bed by now. Like, what do they want? And the text message says, "Were you just knocking on my door?" And I was like, whoa, like I immediately got goosebumps. I'm like, that's creepy as hell, So I texted him back. I was like, no, like, what happened? And so they ended up calling me so like we could talk about it. So apparently after I left, they went upstairs, they did their, ablutions, brushing the teeth and all that stuff, and then went to bed. And they're laying in bed and they just have music on, and they start to hear soft but incessant knocking on their back door. And the back door is the door that's used the most, to come and go from their place. And they're just hearing a constant soft knocking. And they're like, what the hell? And so they get up. Well, they sit there for a minute and just listen and be like, is that knocking? Is that on my door? Like, they're playing all this stuff in their head. So they get up and they walk to the other bedroom. It was a two-floor apartment, kind of like a townhouse. And they walk across the hall into the second bedroom to look out the window and you can see the parking lot and where my car was parked. And they wanted to see if I was still there, and maybe I'd forgotten something and was softly knocking on the door, to not disturb anybody because it was so late. But they look and my car's not there. And all they had to do from that window, was look down, and they could see whoever was on the front porch knocking. But they refused to do it. They were too scared, because they're there at that window looking out into the parking lot for my car. It's not there, and they're still hearing the knocking. So they're like, okay, I'm done. They went back to the bedroom, turned on the lights, put on Frasier or something,
Gotta drown it out with comedy.
Yeah.
Something scary's going on. You just play the most slapstick comedy you could possibly think of.
Exactly. And that's when they texted me. Did you knock on my door? Are you knocking on my door? And, but sure enough, I wasn't. I had responded, and I wasn't. And they said that it went on for like another minute or so, and then it just stopped. And so I'm wondering, because this happened like right after I left, like, did I cross paths with the black-eyed kids, or were they just standing in the shadows as I left? And then they went boop up the porch and started knocking on the door. I don't know. It literally could have been in anything, but it's creepy as hell.
Yeah, I mean, if it was the black-eyed kids, I mean, it seems to be a weird thing, too, that they always... I don't know if it's something that has to do with like the rules, like this weird set of rules they play by, but it seems like they always will first try to enter at like whatever the main door is, being said that like this isn't, you know, the main front door, this is like their back door that they use as their main door, but they still subconsciously somehow know that that's the main door.
Right.
And even going down to like the encounters that people have in their cars, it's always like the driver's side door. Like I feel like there's something with the contract that it has to be like the main entry point. Like they can't try to come in through a window, they can't try to come in through whatever. It has to be the main entry point, which kind of goes back into the whole idea about like extraterrestrials being very into like the rules and regulations, or is it again something that's existed through time that just has this weird for like I hate always like kind of thrown into like the demonic aspect of things, but for whatever reason when you start talking about the demons and fallen angels, there's like this set rule of contracts. When you get into the paranormal, it seems to kind of be the same way as an extension to that, but you know when it gets into the folklore stuff, I don't want to call it like demonic-y, but it seems like all of this stuff, for whatever reason, they're very like legal about what they're doing for being these like monsters or creatures, which is almost kind of a creepy thing to think about, that the ones that are the monsters are the ones that are the most like legalistic about things, you know?
Right. And it's like and it's almost like they can't help themselves. Like it's inherent or something, you know, like they exist and this is how they do things. Like you can't not do those things.
Yeah, like they're not necessarily conscious. They just kind of have a purpose and they just go about that purpose. Like this is a hard thing for a lot of people to kind of fathom when it comes to this weird stuff, but I don't necessarily think that there's like a reason why a lot of these things do what they do, but rather that it's just its purpose in nature, so to speak, and it just does what it does. Like, you know, why does a bee collect pollen? Like, it doesn't know why it collects pollen. It doesn't have a purpose behind why it does what it does. It's just what it does, and it fulfills that task. And I feel like there's a lot of it with a lot of this stuff that, I mean, even with some of the extraterrestrial stuff, it just seems like there's not necessarily a purpose from our perspective behind what they're doing individually, but rather they're just completing a task because that's the purpose that they have in this universe, whatever it might be.
Right. Yeah. Well said, man. Yeah.
And I guess with that a bit too, I wanted to make sure that we had a little bit of time because for whatever reason, the first time we didn't end up diving into anything more extraterrestrial. So this has kind of been like a good leeway in. As far as your book, did you end up covering any more extraterrestrial type humanoid encounters?
Yeah, there's an entire chapter just based on aliens, and I think I told one about the disappearing alien.
I don't think I heard that one.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll tell that just in case I didn't tell it last time. But this was much more recent, 2019, and it was summertime, and this woman was outside talking on the phone to her dad, and she had her dog with her, and her boyfriend was inside somewhere. It's like 7:00 at night. And she notices that the dog is kind of like standing still and like staring at something, but she's kind of like half paying attention because she's on the phone and everything. But then the dog starts to growl. And she's like, what the hell's going on with this dog? So she's looking at the dog, and the dog's intently looking at something and now growling. So she follows its gaze. And at the base of this tree, about 50 yards away, she sees this crouching creature. And to her, it looks like a tall gray alien crouched down. And so she's talking on the phone to her dad, and when she sees this thing, she's like, Dad, I gotta go. So she like gets off the phone and like shoves the phone in her pocket, and doing that gesture kind of like signaled to the dog, like, yep, go ahead, go attack this thing. So the dog took off running and barking at this creature. The creature then stood up. She said it was like 7-8 feet tall, very slender. It stood up and started running away. As it was running away, it started to disappear from the head down. And at one point, she's seen just 2 running legs, and then those disappear too. And when it finally disappears completely, the dog stops running, but stops and continues to bark. And she's like, what the hell did I just see? This was crazy. So she finally like wrangles the dog back and everything, gets the dog inside and yells to her boyfriend and tells him what happened. And he believes her. You know, she just doesn't go around making up stuff like this. So he believes her, and they go outside to see if there's any sort of evidence of this thing having been there. So she takes him to the tree where it was, and there's literally no footprints or anything, because it wasn't the kind of ground that would leave footprints, you know. So they have no idea what happened. And to this day, like when she closes her eyes, she still sees it. Like it freaks her out, you know, rightfully so.
That thing literally like phasing out in front of her. I mean, like, I've heard some weird stories, but that's definitely one of the weirdest like extraterrestrial stories. It's like this thing, I don't know if it's a matter of like this thing was just out trying to observe and like watch her to figure out what was going on. Like, I don't know, it's like reasoning for being there, but it just seems like so weird that it would just flee and like dissolve off and not be like with a group or like near a ship or something like that. Like it's such a weird one-off thing. Like sometimes you hear these like mantis types encounters, and those things have this like they tend to like phase out as people tend to see them, but it's generally not like as they're running away from somebody or running away from a dog, you know, but it kind of brings in a new possibility to something like the Fresno night crawlers, for example, if you kind of start to consider this half phasing idea and how fast it goes too. Cause I mean, obviously her retelling her story, I'm kind of curious how fast the transition was over where, you know, you might be able to record footage like the Fresno night crawlers where they cross almost like a whole yard before the lakes completely disappear, you know?
Right. You know, from the way she told it, it all happened like in a matter of seconds once the dog took off running, you know, because the dog wasn't that far away. It had like, you know, the alien had like a 50-yard head start or whatever, but she didn't say it moved inhumanly fast or anything. And she actually used the word cloaking, which I thought was interesting. Kind
of like the, did she describe it by chance, not to interrupt you, but like the predator camouflage thing? Because I know that's like a reoccurring thing where it's like she can see where it is, even though she can't necessarily see it. Was it kind of like that?
No, she didn't see it like that, but she did use talk about predator and talked about cloaking, but she wasn't seeing it like, you know, like wrapped in cellophane or like Invisible Man type stuff running. She wasn't seeing that. It was literally disappearing. But it is cool and interesting that she used the word cloaking. But, you know, as soon as she saw it, she was doing like tons of research on aliens and stuff. So, you know, like you Google disappearing alien and I'm sure a bunch of predator stuff comes up or whatever, you know.
You got to control the narrative, man, because then if people start talking about it, they instantly associate it with a movie, you know. That's what I'm always joking about. What came first? It's like the chicken and the egg, you know.
Yeah. Is that based, you know, the writer of that movie, you know, did they have an experience or did they, you know, read some cool UFO stuff, you know, and came up with that for the movie? But anyway.
I guess kind of since we're on like we're talking about UFOs, I always like to dive into if there's UFOs or if there's extraterrestrial sightings that are a little bit more of the obscure ones. I know a lot of people end up seeing grays, but just from your research covering it in the book, have you come across any more like one-off or kind of weird, obscure extraterrestrial type beings?
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned the mantis man type of alien, the mantis type of alien. And there was a child, very small child, who had a really weird experience that they told their mom about. And this wasn't that long ago either. This might have been 2021, might have been time frame. And this is a town that's on the coast, you know, so again, like very, you know, like near water. So that's kind of interesting. And the child,
especially considering the first time you're on the show, by the way, that we're talking about, you know, all the underwater UFOs, just to throw that in there.
Yeah. So the mom and the child are, I can't remember what they were doing, but they were doing something together. And the kid was like, Mom, something strange happened to me yesterday. And this is a very small child, like 4 years old. And the mother's like, you know, because the mom's always with it, you know, with the kid. So she's like, when the hell did something strange happen to you? You know, she's thinking in her head. But Mom, something strange happened to me yesterday. And she's like, what? She's like, well, I had gone to bed. And, you know, the sibling had gone to bed as well. They're in the same bedroom. So Mom must have put them to bed, you know. And they're young, so they're in bed pretty early. But I was laying in bed, and this giant ant came in, picked me up, bit me on the inside of my stomach, and then put me back down and left the room. And the mom was like, what?
Bit me on the inside of my stomach. I'm sure you're going to clarify on that one, but that's a little weird.
It is very weird. And mom tried to clarify. And the kid was like, didn't have any other words to describe it. So there was no clarification, unfortunately. But I'm sitting there at this kitchen table with the two moms, and the kids are kind of like playing in the background. And every once in a while, one of them will like zoom through and be like, "Oh, hey, mom, blah, blah, blah." And like, oh, and finally, the one that had the experience came in. They're like, "Oh, we're telling Nomar about the weird bug that you saw." And they were like, whatever. And then like ran off. Like it clearly, like they've come to terms with it or whatever, So
kids' paradoxes of things in the world too. I mean, they see something at such an early age, it just kind of becomes as messed up as it sounds, like part of like, that's what's in the world. And they just don't even think twice about it again, you know?
Yeah, very, very true. So, I'm talking to mom at this point, and so I'm like, what? Bit them on the inside of their stomach? Like, yeah. And I tried to get more information about what they meant about that, but that's the only way that they could describe it. But they did say a little bit more as mom was asking like clarifying questions. So she found out that when the large ant put the kid back down in the bed, it backed out of the room so it could keep its eye on the kid. And so it's backing out of the room, and it gets to the doorway and turns around, and the staircase is right there. It's just about to go down the staircase, and it looks back at the kid one more time, doesn't do anything else, and then goes down the stairs, and the kid can hear it leave through the front door. They hear the front door open and close. And that's the rest of the story.
That makes it even creepier that it actually used the door. I feel like, the whole idea about something deteriorating out of a wall or not leaving anywhere that is creepy enough, but just throwing the spin of something actually being physical and like walking out of the door, it like throws in a whole other like, wait, what kind of spin into it?
It really does. It really does. This is a very physical encounter. The kid's being carried. It's being bitten. This thing is walking out backwards. Like I'm picturing this weird, like backing up of an ant, like bipedally. And then it, physically goes down the stairs and physically opens the door and closes it. It's very tangible,
Kid was eating too much sugar. It had to, go and get that clump of sugar.
And the kid also mentioned they left the sibling alone. Didn't bother with them at all. It was just them.
Which makes it even weirder because it's like, what's the reasoning behind it? I mean, the extraterrestrial stuff, you get into like, specific genetics, and sometimes they'll leave the brother to sleep and they'll take the one, but this isn't an abduction or anything. Like this is maybe extraterrestrial, but it almost kind of seems like if it's ant-like, it might be something that's a little bit more, more of like an underground dweller, possibly.
That's certainly possible. So,
especially getting into Native American folklore with like, all the different talks about the different ant people.
Absolutely, dude. And the mother, after hearing the story, went and got one of their science books, and they started flipping through to be like, can you show me like what the insect looked like? And so they went to the ant section first, because that's the word they used. And when they looked at the ant, they're like, nah, it wasn't this, and they couldn't really find something that looked like it. It was, once they got to like the praying mantis and the grasshoppers, that was a little closer, but it still wasn't exactly, according to the kid anyway.
So some other type of like insectoid, like going into a whole other category of like aliens, so to speak. Because I don't want to necessarily say they're extraterrestrial, because when you start getting into like the insectoids, I know a lot of people have their theories, but everybody talks about the like aliens being from Earth theory, and I think that if there's any validity to that, like there definitely is with the Greys, talking about the underground dweller aspect of things and the bigger eyes and the skin, but it seems like the insectoids would definitely be something that might be from our physical world and living somewhere relatively close to us without us realizing. Like I said, possibly even underground, especially considering that they're bugs, and if they have these like giant mandibles and these different things, I mean, who knows how strong these things could possibly be to be able to tunnel things out and actually be able to live underground. Because they say an ant can lift 8 times its weight. Imagine how much damage a ant size person thing could be able to do to a cave that a human or a miner wouldn't be able to do.
Right.
Inquiries about reality will return after this quick commercial break. And we are back, so let's hop right in.
I guess kind of starting to wrap up towards the end, man, because I don't want to give away too many stories from your book, because you want to make sure people go out and read it, because it's definitely a fascinating book.
There's a ton of stories, so don't worry too much about that. But there is kind of an addendum to this story. Completely unrelated. About a month later, I was in the same town that this woman lived in where this thing happened. And I was in town because I was at a used tire garage and I was buying 4 tires for my vehicle. And I'm talking to the old timer who owns this garage, just a small business type thing, really, salt of the earth kind of guy. And he's got just 2 other employees, and they're the ones that do the tire stuff. And he makes the appointments and takes the money. And I'm sitting basically in his office. His office is kind of like the waiting room. It's a very small place. And, I'm kind of sitting there and I'm on my phone, but every once in a while we're talking a little bit, how it is talking to old timers, you talk about the weather or, whatever. And he finally asks at one point, well, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, well, I'm a writer. Oh, what do you write? And so that's when we get into the UFOs and the strangeness. And he's like, that's kind of funny. This didn't faze him in a bit. Like I tell people that I'm a writer, that's a little odd, at least where I'm from, And then the subject of what I write about, that's another whole thing. And he was just like, because he lives in that town. He was like, I was having coffee one morning and I was out in my garage tinkering around. And this is probably 5 years ago. And I can hear a motor, something buzzing in the background, in the distance, and it's getting closer and it's getting closer. So I step outside my garage and I got my coffee and he's looking like the sound's coming from this field that's behind his house. There's no roads. There's nothing. It's just woods beyond that. And he hears this motor or this high whining sound getting closer and closer. And suddenly it comes into view and he sees 2 insectoid type creatures riding what he calls like these hover bikes from Star Wars. And they zoom by like 5 a.m. across this field where there's no road or anything. And he sees them and he's like, well, that just friggin' happened. And he goes back in his garage and is tinkering around. And when his wife got up, he told her about it. And then he told me. I think he said I might have been the 4th person he told.
And I'm assuming this guy probably is like doesn't seem like the type of dude who's just going to be making this stuff up. Like he has no reason to Yeah,
in my opinion, no reason to make it up. He seems like a hardworking Mainer type of guy who owns a garage. Looking at his office, the stuff he has decorated, there's like old Irving toy trucks and, other like kind of Hot Wheels type things. And, like a clock that looks like a tire, and there's nothing to indicate that he's into the paranormal in any way, and he only brought it up because I'd been sitting there. Chris, I mean, it took, I was like the 2nd or 3rd person. I think I was the 3rd person. Like I had gotten there 3rd. And so like I was the last one being waited on, so I'd been waiting for a while. And he and I had struck up a conversation here and there, for like the last half hour, 45 minutes. But it was in that moment when my car was actually being worked on when he finally asked like what I did. And he only brought up the high strangeness once I mentioned UFOs and, Bigfoot and stuff like that.
He just wanted somebody to tell the story to because he knows that nobody else was listening to him. So it's one of those things that you can't just go around telling everybody that because people are going to think you're crazy. But the right person comes through your shop.
Yeah. But he had no problem telling me. And his shop is literally a football field's length away from this woman's house that I went to. and they told that story. It was crazy that it was the same town. Like, it was literally like 6-7 houses down, is where they lived. It was wild. I was like, what? And so when I got home, I actually text messaged the mom, and I was like, yo, this just happened. I was at the tire shop, and I said the name of it. And she's like, oh my God, yeah, we've gone there before. And it's not, she doesn't personally know him, but she's been there, and has done business there. And she's like, oh my God, I can't believe that. I'm like, I know, somebody else in your town saw 2 insectoid type things on weird hover bikes. Like, this guy seems like he's 80 years old. Like, I wouldn't think he had seen Star Wars or was into sci-fi, but he literally used the word like Star Wars. I was like, wow, that's wild.
Got to start poking and prodding around that town to see if anybody's seen anything. You got to make like wanted posters with like insectoids on it. It says, have you seen me? Please call. Nomar Slevik. Well, maybe don't put your name and number on there, but maybe put an email on there.
An email is not bad.
That's just a throwaway email in case people start blowing it up with the wrong things. But
yeah, but pretty wild, man. I couldn't believe that happened. It was really interesting, and I feel like really fortunate that I've been able to hear these really interesting stories from really interesting, really kind, down to earth people. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, people don't have a reason to like make this type of stuff up. I mean, especially something that they don't necessarily have a paradigm for to begin with. And even going through the pictures and having the kid try to describe what he saw, like that, for me at least, kind of adds some more validity to it, that he clearly saw something that he didn't know how to describe. And even seeing pictures still, any kid that would have been like, oh yeah, that's close enough. That's it right there. Like, there was something to it that he saw that he clearly was like, no, that's not it. No, that's not quite it. No, that's not quite it.
This is closer, like it was a whole thing, and for the mom to be that understanding and not dismissive, like to go to those lengths too, I thought was really great.
You should at some point, if you ever have a friend that's an artist or something, see if they can do like a sketch of this thing for this kid, and then take that picture and go up to that guy and say like, hey, does this by chance look like those things that you saw? And see if you can kind of get like a chain going from there, because then at least if you have a face or an idea, you kind of know what you're working with, and then at least you can kind of go around, and even if people are kind of weird about it, you can at least be like, hey, this is kind of weird. Does this seem like something you may have seen before? Like, you think this is a cool picture? You can kind of leeway yourself in a little bit. Or even on the flip side, man, if you can get like a good rendition of this thing, when you go to this town, you just get it printed on a t-shirt and then you just wear it around. And if anybody has seen anything like that, they'll come up and be like, hey, what is that?
Yeah. Why are you wearing that?
Yeah. What is that exactly? And then you can kind of start poking and prodding from there. You got to use psychology, man.
Yeah. You're filled with great ideas, man. This is awesome.
It's like putting a big billboard out without actually having to ask people to tell weird stuff. It's kind of like the idea that if you go to a Sasquatch town, you do the thing where you wear like a Sasquatch shirt, and then anybody that might have a story, they kind of it opens the door a little bit.
Yeah.
But something that precise, you gotta make like a t-shirt or something for it, and just have something that gets people to start talking about it.
Yeah. That was a great idea, man.
Hold on tight, guys. We'll be right back after this brief commercial break. And now back to the show. But starting to wrap up towards the end, man. Before we get into where everybody can find your books, I always like to end the show, as usual, with some words of wisdom. So if there's any words of wisdom you might want to bestow on the listeners today, man, what might it be?
Boy, that's a good question. I wish I would have thought about it more.
I warned you.
No, I know. I'm sure I said something similar last time. So for people listening, and you've heard both part 1 and part 2, I'm so sorry, but it's really important. I think it's very important to approach people and their lives and their stories and what they've gone through, regardless of the type of person that they are, to approach them with kindness and with an open mind. You never know what somebody's going through. You never know what's in somebody's background. So approaching people with kindness and a non-judgmental ear, I think, is just a really good best practice. And I always practice it. And it's only done good things anytime I've implemented it. So.
And I mean, as a researcher too, you never know who might have that connecting piece of the puzzle. So, if you entertain all the stories, you may not seem like it's a person that, they may seem like they're a person that's making up the story, but once you get into like the finite details and you really start paying attention, there might be something that ends up connecting in your research. So definitely, no matter what, attack all this stuff with the utmost respect. And even on the flip side of it, I've talked about this a bunch of times with like extraterrestrial abductions, things like that, especially encounters that people have had as a kid. And I'm not trying to take away from anybody's encounter that's had one, but there are certain instances where the brain will try to cover up certain traumas by trying to put this other thing into it. And a lot of like the extraterrestrial stuff where you have these situations where people are strapped down on tables doing these types of things. Obviously, you can kind of read between the lines the type of trauma that somebody may have experienced as a kid, and being a kid and not wanting to rationalize that these are real people, they kind of put like another facade onto it. So by hearing some of these extraterrestrial stories, I mean, obviously you want to hear these stories for the sake of like the bizarre aspect to it. But at the end of the day, keep in mind that, the stories may not be as they appear, even though the people lived the moments as they explain them. And, some of these stories may be some traumas that people need to work through that, they experience it one way, but it may have been something completely different. So again, attack it with the utmost respect, because you never know which side of the fence it might end up leaning on.
Absolutely. That's very sound advice.
And if anybody wanted to come and find your book, they possibly wanted to contact you with some more strange stories, possibly even people in that town that may have seen some type of insectoids, definitely make sure you guys contact Nomar, because I would love to hear about them. And I know Nomar would definitely love to be able to start collecting a database on these things. Where can everybody come and find your books, and where can people contact you and find you on the internet, man?
I think the easiest thing for people to do is to Google my name, Nomar Slevik. I'm the only one, and all of my stuff comes up when you Google Nomar Slevik. But if you want a specific site to go to, slevikstore.company.site. That's where you can buy books directly from me. I send them out. I sign them. I put bookmarks and stickers in there and send them out to you directly. But if you have Amazon or you have Prime and you like that free shipping, which I can't blame you, all of my work is available on Amazon as well. So you can go to Amazon, much like Google, and just type in my name, Nomar Slevik, and all my books come up. And it's got this latest one too, Humanoid Encounters. Also, I'd like to say this summer I've been doing like a spooky summer tour of libraries and a few other like businesses sprinkled in. Like we have a horror shop in Bangor, and I set up a table there and signed books and sold books and stuff. And I've been giving talks at libraries all throughout Maine. And I'm going to be in Skowhegan, Maine on Thursday, and then China, Maine on Saturday, sharing even more different stories from the book than what you heard here. So if you happen to be in the area, you got family that are in the area, tell them to go to their local library, and I'm probably going to be giving a talk there.
And I know that you've been posting those on social media, so everybody can go and follow on social media, and I'm sure you'll get updates for anywhere else you might be stopping out this summer too.
Absolutely.
And as usual, man, I absolutely appreciate you making the time to come on the show. Looking forward to doing another part, maybe not to this book, but we'll end up diving into another one at some point. And as we were talking about before the show, it's a little hot where you are today, so we're not going to be able to dive into a 0.5 episode, but maybe next time we'll be able to dive into a 0.5 and get into some awesome behind-the-scenes conversation, man.
Absolutely. I'm being a baby. I need a fan on me, Shane.
I don't blame you, man. It's been like crazy humid where I'm at too. I know not as far north as you, or not as close to the water, but I'm in Michigan and it's been corn sweat season over here, man. So it's been like 90 something degrees of the humidity. So I completely understand. I got a fan over in the other room that's blowing up and around the wall. So it's far enough away that you don't hear it, but it's using the wall so it can come back in my direction a bit. So
good for you, Shane.
If anyone would like to get in touch with me for any reason whatsoever, you guys can do so through email, which is inquiriesofourrealitypodcast@outlook.com, or through social media. Instagram and Facebook are the two that I'm most active on. Or you guys can also get a hold of me through the submission form, which is up at the top of the link tree. And the last way you guys can get a hold of me is through the hotline. You guys can call or text that 24/7, whatever happens to be easier for you guys. And that number is 313-364-1551. And that number is available down in the show description. And every other thing that I mentioned is also available off of the link tree, which is also available down in that show description. And with that, hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. Hope today's show's connected some dots in your own reality. And I'll catch you guys on the next one. Have a good night, everybody.
Reality isn't what it seems. Abductees taking aboard a craft with a tractor beam. Is life a simulation or an astral dream? Aliens travel through black holes in different galaxies. Life is a bizarre odyssey. With Mike talking about philosophy. Well, Bigfoot is stalking camp.